So if I just explain the context, within BIM4Housing, we've been looking to create standardized data libraries that can be used for various different purposes, for defining requirements, for product information, procedures. And the tool that we're using to achieve that is called the Templater. Because what it does, it then standardizes the way information is structured so that it can be used and consumed in project information models. So in other words, on the main projects side, but also later as asset information models to populate whatever applications are being used by the client. Now, to achieve that, you've got to look at all of the different information sets. So, for example, in the housing sector, there's something called HACT, which is in some ways the equivalent of Building Smart for housing associations. And they have got a series of standards for how information needs to be structured. It's a data model, and then it defines all of the properties that go into this type of environment. So that's a data dictionary. We've got many other data dictionaries, though, in the industry that we use. So, for example, we've got IFC and the Building Smart Data Dictionary. We've also got Uniclass, which is, in some cases, it's similar information, but it's structured for different purposes. We've then got the CIBSI data set, which again is another data dictionary, NRM, and also something that you might not be aware of, but it's becoming increasingly significant, ETIM, which is the standard that procurement people and all the distributors use for manufacturers' information. So if we just look at each of those data dictionaries, they're all holding information that is being curated for their particular purpose. So MBS, for example, this is for a boiler, and you'll see there we've got in the first column, we've got a lot of information that is specific to this type of asset. But then the rest of it is probably more common, standard sort of COBie data for any type of manufactured product. But this is the information that if a manufacturer were being asked to satisfy the BIM toolkit, then this is the information they'd be asked for. But you might think that CIBSI would have a say in this. And obviously, they've produced their own data dictionary for the information that's important to them as M&E engineers. And this doesn't match to either the MBS information or indeed the IFC definition. So IFC is yet another data dictionary, which is being curated for certain purposes. And one of the challenges is when you're then using this in applications, and what people are doing is embedding this into Revit families, which of those attributes do you actually choose to use and in which context? If we then move on to the work that Mirko and BRE were doing, which is taking the environmental declarations of performance, or EPDs rather, environmental performance declarations, into this environment here. There's no such thing as a boiler that's specifically been designed, but there's lots of properties that are being used to calculate carbon. And there's over 50, there's over 200, so there's not enough space to put these all on the screen. So what do we do with all of these different property sets? A lot of effort's been put into between people arguing as to whether something is or isn't needed. We've taken the view that the information is needed for a purpose by somebody, and therefore it's not for people to say that CIBSI, for example, shouldn't be asking for certain information. So what we really need is something that glues that together, and that's what the templater is. So the templater is effectively a means by which we can connect to all of these different data dictionaries select which information we think is appropriate for a particular purpose, and then pull that together. And Templater is being used by, at the moment, the Construction Innovation Hub to standardize with the CPA what manufacturers can provide in terms of their manufacturers' data. So this is the tool, and just to explain the process, you'll see here we've got connections out into different data sets, and it's been designed to be able to connect and interoperate with any other data dictionary. So in this case, what we've got for a door, we've got multiple classifications according to how it's actually going to be used. So here, for example, we've got down here, we've got Uniclass, but we've got all the other standards. And it might well be that if a door is being used in in maybe a riser cupboard or something like that, it's classified differently than an entrance door. See down on the right hand side here, you've got the different types of doors, and therefore you can then structure that and map it accordingly. What we've also got here are groups of properties. So the attributes that are needed for a particular purpose are grouped in the data dictionary into sets of information. So in this case, we've got, this is called door type common. Also, this is the manufacturer's information, sorry. So this is the manufacturer's information. This is the information the manufacturer would be expected to provide. And here we've got the information that is more general to any type of door. And you can see here we've got 10, 12 or so different attributes. And these are coming from a lower level library of attributes or properties. So if we then go in and look at this particular item, one of those attributes you'll see there was status. So the data dictionary allows you to then define what information as allowed values you want as a drop down against that status, and also at what work stage that information is going to be of interest. What you're also able to do is say who needs to be providing this information. So here, for example, fire rating, because it's something that is ubiquitous across the project, we've got a series of actors here who have to provide that information, and also the life cycle stages at which that information is going to be expected. So the templater allows this type of information to be filtered according to who's going to use it and when. What we're then doing here, you see here, we've got a series of actors that have been set up: designers, manufacturers, specifiers. This is all flexible, so that can be added to. And if you then select designer, this is the information that somebody has determined is important to a designer at that stage. So you'll see it's fairly limited. Whereas if you then go and look at a specifier, they have got a lot more information required. So here we've got information on condition, quantities, durability ratings, etc. And there's several pages of information here. So the environmental impact values and indicators. And then if we then go into a different actor, so here we've got manufacturers, what we're doing here, we're filtering the information that the manufacturer would be expected to provide at the design stage. But also it might be from an installer's perspective that they're just looking for this information, but at a design stage. But then at handover and closeout, they're actually being asked also for information about the condition. So the important thing about this is being able to look at this vast amount of information and be able to filter it according to the way in which somebody would need to consume it. And that's probably going to be organized by the software applications that somebody's using. In this case, for example, somebody that's doing a handover, they might have a survey tool that's actually capturing this information. So the templater is telling them what information the experts say is needed at that stage. Coming on to the really important meaty stuff for Zero. Here we've got within IFC, we've got the environmental information that is relevant in terms of impact values. So again, we're filtering this out. So here we've got against these are the properties that we'd expect to see information being provided on. And here we've got the indicators that you'd use in that context as well. And what we're then doing is then looking at this from so that's IFC. Up till now, we've been just looking at IFC. Now we're going to look at the work that Mirko and the sustainability team at BRE did. So they've taken the EDP information, as I understand it, and they've put those attributes into the templater. So here we've got some master templates, and they've created them for buildings, zones, elements, materials, and spaces. So that's the high level. And in each of these, we've got individual property sets and also individual attributes. So if we then go on and say, right, for the group, these are the groups of properties that are relevant to an element. So if we continue the example of the door is an element. So these are the individual property sets that Mirko has identified are needed for each of these. So you'll see here we've got information on time, on costs, and you've got the attributes there. So we can drill into one of those, let's say climate change, for example, and we've got a series of attributes that Mirko has assigned against climate change as a property set. And these, again, are being drawn from the master library. We can look at another one here. So as we drill into this, we've then got one of those attributes. So that's one of the attributes that was in that list there. We've drilled into that. And what we're now into is actually looking at that individual property and also who's responsible for it. So the actors are the transporter, the manufacturer, and somebody measuring performance. And the life cycle stage that this particular attribute is being measured is transport to the factory. But there are other attributes or property sets. Here, for example, we've got something called function requirements. So there's a series of different questions here, and also a series of questions about transport, maintenance, and end of life. So the templater, this is obviously a very complex set of information, but the templater allows us to hold all of that in a common data set, but then filter it according to how people want to use it. And we can then generate from that machine readable information for, in this case, an element. So all of these values here are coming from the database. So this can be delivered out as a spreadsheet or as a JSON file, or it can also be delivered as part of an API. So here we've got, this is the way ActivePlan's doing it from within Revit. We've built an add-in for Revit, which allows us to connect to the templater and also allows us to connect into the asset information requirements and also the product library. So the important thing about this is it's eliminating the need to put a lot of this data actually into the Revit models. We're managing it in a proper database environment that then is connecting to the rest of the world. And this, in this particular example, this is also now connecting to the product library. So broadly, that's my session.
Yep, that was great, George. Thank you so much. Anyone has any questions? No? Okay then.
I'm intrigued that nobody's found that. So was that all so well communicated that
thank you, George, for the presentation. I think it's for me personally, it was quite interesting. But obviously, it's, I think, one of those things that you get to have more questions while working directly on it. So at this stage, for me personally, it's like an introduction. So I was glad to have it.
okay? I think the thing about carbon footprint is it's a very complex thing to be able to calculate. And we need to be able to have the one-click LCA, for example, as I understand it, provides you with an answer, but the answer is based on a particular manufacturer's product. Now, I know nothing about one-click LCA, but I was on a hackathon a couple of weeks ago and I was talking with an architect who uses it extensively. And although it's a good application, what she was saying was that if, for example, she wants to have a calculation for embedded carbon of a door, then she will have to pick something from the LCA library, which isn't quite the same as the thing that she's looking to use, because it might have a different type of finish or slightly different information, and she's not able to adjust it and work that up. Now, the point about the templater is that it's providing that base level of information that you can then configure your own data sets according to that particular condition. So if a zero, what we're trying to do is to be able to align information that then is an answer. The question is, or the point is, how do we then make it configurable? And that's where the templater comes in. You're able to hold the information at that deep granular level. So you're able to say that this particular wood has come from this particular source, and this is how it was transported, and therefore, and this is how it was installed, and this was how it was addressed. So all of that complexity is managed from within the templater.
I think that was one question I wanted to have, and you've really nailed it. As a from a manufacturer supplier's perspective, like in order to differentiate your solutions against the competitor, and one of the key points was the transport modes, for example. I so if I understand you correctly, as a manufacturer, I will then position my the information about my products as a variation or a different, I don't know, same type, but a different instance of that product that has a lower transport.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
I think the point is, as we've learned from,
and then that would possibly allow me to position myself as the, for example, the least carbon, the least transport associated carbon product on the market.
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes, exactly. And I think what we've learned from, for example, cycling, where the performance management has been on the basis. David Brailsford, who ran the Sky cycling team, what they did was just incrementally improve things, and over a period of time, they just made small increments, incremental changes that improved overall performance. And I think that's what we need to try and do as far as the carbon side is concerned. But we can only do that if we've got a mechanism by which we can work at the level of granularity that I've just illustrated there.
I absolutely agree. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Could I just ask, so from the people on the call, you're presumably from manufacturing. Sean, where are you from?
Sorry, there was problems with mute. I am a MBA student at the University of Adelaide in Australia.
Okay.
So I'm new to all of this. I'm just kind of listening in and trying to absorb as much as I can at the moment.
Cool. Okay. And Tasha?
So I work for Natural Building Systems, and we are making a kind of standardized SIPS panel, essentially, so offsite modular housing. But I think we're really interested in kind of what you're talking about. I think the thing that we're finding at this stage is, although we really kind of like absolutely eventually want to be part of something like this, I think it's time and the amount of time that it takes. So yeah, I mean, it was really interesting to kind of listen to it, and yeah, I think we're just working through the kind of early stages at the moment, but eventually, hopefully, we'll be able to use a platform like this.
Yeah, it's interesting because the template is free, by the way. It's not
useful to know.
I should have said that. Yeah. The interesting thing for you as a manufacturer is you're probably going to be asked for BIM data. You're probably going to be asked for BIM objects. The question is, what information would you put into them? And therefore, and what information, what format would you use? Would you follow the MBS data, or would you use IFC? Yeah, or would you, so the point is, there are many different schemas, many different data sets, and this is the complexity of the process. And what I'm hoping is that Zero can act as as an expert group who can coordinate or interpret what's important from Zero's perspective, because there's going to be people that are going to be looking at things from a cost management perspective, health and safety perspective, or a offsite manufacturing perspective. So lots of different people will want different information for different purposes. And that's why we've created the templater, to be able to hold this vast range of different ways that information needs to be maybe described, but then present it in a consistent way. Stephen, what do you do?
Hey, George. Yeah, similar to Sean, really. I'm very new to in the instance that I'm very new to this. It's all very new to me. So I'm just kind of trying to absorb information at the minute. I'm from a company called Robertson Construction, and we're a main contractor basically. The bit that I've kind of had it thrown on me in the last couple of weeks, that I'm going to be the sort of champion for digital and BIM and sustainability in the group. So I've shown a bit of an interest in it, so that's why they've kind of thrown it to me, because I am interested in this type of thing. So I'm just trying to kind of find my feet at the minute. And then what interests me in particular is if we get a tender in, or a bid, or something that lands on our desk that we've got to price or procure or whatever, we've got to build it ultimately. We're interested in giving the options to build it, but also saying, reducing the embodied carbon at the same time as well, or at least giving the client options, saying, look, it'll cost you this amount to build it. You've specified it, or we could do it for this amount with, completely reducing the carbon, or we could balance it out some way or one another. So that's in a simple, simply put, that's kind of where I am with things at the minute. But like I say, I'm very new to all of this, so I'm just trying to find out where I should be channeling my thoughts and trying to absorb that information.
Well, if you want to send me an email, Stephen, and I can introduce you to you know, some of the other people that you know, in the BIM4Housing community, we've got a lot of people that can probably help you.
Right. Yeah, that'd be really good, George. I'll drop you an email.
Good.
Like I say, I'm aware I've got a lot to learn and a lot to pick up. So any information is good information as far as I'm concerned at the minute.
Good. Okay.
There's a lot out there.
All right. Well,
George, I'm from a company. We do rebar, reinforcement bars, but we do them off-site in a modular way. So I was hoping to get something to offer that granularity where we can really differentiate what we are offering, because at the end of the day it's rebar, but then there's some service added to it, and other benefits. So I'm really happy to have learned about the systems you've put together. So yeah, I'll also give you an email on that.
Yeah, it's basically part of a building block of several applications that we've created, which manage data in data libraries, which therefore means that because I don't know if you're familiar, but you know, if for example you've got information that you need in a design application, you can hold it actually in the neutral database. We use SQL Server. And you can connect to it from your design application or your procurement applications or logistics dynamically. So you're not having to put information into something like Revit or Xsteel or something like that, and then go through the complexity, which it is complexity, of exporting it as IFC, because IFC will work in different ways for different parties. So the data, holding the data in the cloud and connecting it via APIs is a more resilient manner of holding this information.
All in line with the whole common data environment, right?
Exactly. And lots of interoperable data dictionaries and lots of interoperable data sets. So therefore, it means that people can have curated a set of information that reflects their particular interests. The other thing that we can do with the templater is make it so that it's not just elements, it's not just objects. We can also put activities in there as well. So we can say, right, for a particular process of maybe installation, these are the activities that we'd expect to be carried out by these people who hold this qualification. So it's this type of information. So, and as I say, the application itself is, we're not charging for it. Okay.
Thank you.